So we have Debbie Kerrigan here and Amanda Holt. Debbie Kerrigan if you're looking at the screen, she's on your left and her hair is down. Amanda's hair is up in a bun. Debbie, MSOTRL, is a senior occupational therapist at Newton Wellesley Hospital Rehab Services. She received her Master's of Science in Occupational Therapy from BU's Sargent College in 2002 and has been in Newton Wellesley for 20 years. Debbie currently works in the outpatient rehab department in Wells Avenue, where she treats adults with a variety of diagnoses whose physical, cognitive, and or visual changes are interfering with their ability to perform necessary and or desired activities. Debbie has completed additional training in visual rehab after neurological events, concussion and post-concussion syndrome, and driver rehabilitation. She is certified in LSVT BIG, which I'm, videos off, is a car fit event coordinator and a We Need to Talk facilitator. And Amanda on the right with the bun, MSOTRL, is a senior occupational therapist at Newton Wellesley Hospital Rehab Services. Upon completing her Master of Science in Occupational Therapy at Tufts in 2017, Amanda began her career working in the acute inpatient setting where she divided her time amongst the neurological, cardiac, and orthopedic units. She was then given the opportunity to work in the outpatient setting where she first got to experience the role of occupational therapy at driver rehabilitation. Since coming to Newton Wellesley in 2019, Amanda has expanded her education to include training in older adult driving, driving after neurological events, low vision, and visual rehabilitation after neurological events, and has contributed to the evolution of the Drive Safe program that continues to be offered at Newton Wellesley. So let's get started. They will speak, and then when they are done speaking, we'll probably have a half an hour of questions. If there's anything urgent in the sense that you don't understand something they just put on the screen and you need clarification, put something in the chat and I will try to interrupt them very gently. So let's get started and welcome. Thank you for being here.
Okay, thank you, Tracy. Just another logistical thing. There are a couple of messages that are coming in through the chat directly to us. One was asking about whether about closed captioning. Could we access closed captioning? I don't know the answer to that.
I don't have the ability. I'm not the tech person and no one's asked for that before. This will be recorded. So I will be, for everyone who signed up, if you're on here and you saw the link through the Temple Emmanuel website and you didn't email me, then you'll need to email me after, but I will send out the link and it's not going to be closed caption, but you can listen to it again. I will also notes. So, and then you're going to be emailing some information as well, correct? You're emailing the slide. They're going to be emailing the slides. So that should help as well for people that, it's hard to hear or listen and take notes and all of that. Oh, and one more thing. I wanted to also thank publicly the Newton Senior Center for promoting this. And I really appreciate that. And of course, I want to thank Newton Wellesley Hospital for offering this service and for both of you for coming here. So thank you.
Good morning.
One more logistical thing. While we have the PowerPoint slides going, if you are going to enter anything into the chat, make sure it's to everybody so Tracy can see it. We're not going to be monitoring the chat while we're speaking, okay? We are going to go off video while the PowerPoint slides are up, and then we're going to turn our video back on for the question and answer session. Okay?
Perfect.
Okay, thank you again to all of you for joining us. I'm going to start this evening with an amusing quip to set the stage for the presentation. Oh, sorry about that. Okay, so I've sure gotten old. I've had 2 bypass surgeries, a hip replacement, new knees, and fought prostate cancer. I'm half blind, can't hear anything quieter than a jet engine, take 40 different medications that make me dizzy, winded, and subject to blackouts, have bouts with dementia, have poor circulation, can't remember if I'm 85 or have lost all my, I have to move this. Sorry, this is ruining my little joke here. Okay, can't remember if I'm 85 or 92, have lost all my friends, but thank God I still have my driver's license. This is something that's been passed around on the internet for as long as I've been involved in driver rehabilitation. As Tracy said, I'm Debbie Kerrigan, and I'm here with my colleague Amanda Holt. We are both senior occupational therapists in the Drive Safe program at Newton Wellesley Hospital. And tonight we're going to be talking about older drivers, what puts older drivers at risk, but more importantly, we'll be providing you with some tips and tricks for staying on the road and driving safely for as long as possible. I think it's important for everyone to understand that most older drivers are safe drivers. Many older drivers stay safely on the road by self-restricting their driving or by using other strategies. It is also important to understand that research has shown that adults in the US will outlive their ability to drive on average by 7 to 10 years. So while we're working on ways to stay on the road longer, we do also need to be preparing for what we will do when it is time for us to give up the keys. By the end of this presentation, we hope that you will have a better understanding of the age-related changes and medical conditions that may impact a person's ability to safely operate a motor vehicle. Be able to identify strategies that you can use to keep driving safely, have a better understanding of how to determine when it is time to stop driving, and lastly, that you will be able to understand how a formal driving evaluation may be helpful in making the decision to retire from driving. So now I'm going to turn this over to Amanda.
Right, thank you, Debbie. Okay, so in order to understand why we may recommend using the strategies and tips that we're going to discuss tonight, I wanted to first talk about some of the age-related changes that people might experience and how these changes can impact our driving. So some of these are more self-explanatory, like vision changes and neurological disorders, but common conditions such as arthritis and neuropathy can also impact our ability to drive. For instance, arthritis may affect our ability to move our joints freely and quickly, which is important when doing shoulder checks, maintaining control of the wheel, and having quick reactions. Neuropathy alters the way we feel things and can also impact both wheel and pedal control. And of course, we'll talk about cognitive changes, since memory and attention most likely isn't as sharp as people age. Okay, more specifically, the conditions we just identified can have an impact on factors that directly relate to our ability to drive, including our visual, physical, cognitive skills, as well as how well we're sleeping and the medications that we may need to use. So we're going to go through each one of these in more detail and talk about some strategies for each. Okay, first up, one that most people think of when we think about aging is age-related changes in physical abilities. So as adults age, they may experience decreased muscle flexibility and strength, which are important in responding quickly to traffic situations, as well as changes in sensation that may make it difficult to tell if our foot is on the gas pedal or the brake pedal. This is why it's important to keep up with regular physical exercise that has a good balance of stretching, strengthening, and cardiovascular activity in order to maintain the skills that you need just to drive a car and remain alert. You can also do things to compensate for impairments, such as leaving increased space between yourself and other vehicles. But if you're still having some trouble, there are a number of tools and gadgets available to help, which we'll get into on the next slide. But before that, I want to talk about metabolism. So I have metabolism up on this slide because as people age, there is a change in the body's ability to metabolize substances, one of those being alcohol. So it's important to consider because where you may have been able to go out to a party and have a drink and then drive home safely when you were younger, alcohol metabolism metabolizes slower and therefore stays in your body longer as you age. Some strategies to compensate for that change can be having your drink at the very start of the party or simply using alternative transportation. But the overall message is to avoid drinking and driving and understand the increased effects that alcohol can have on you as you age. Okay, so some of the adaptive equipment that I alluded to includes things like different types of mirrors that you can use. So on the left, we have a panoramic rear view mirror. This is the all view mirror system. And we have no affiliate link with any of these products, just so you know. This can be helpful if you have limited neck range of motion or any other condition that might cause dizziness from quick head movements. Another one is the Smart View blind spot mirror, which if I can draw on the screen here. So essentially it gives you complete view of your blind spot. And as long as the car is inside this little square, it's safe to switch lanes or merge. But if any part of it comes outside of like into this area, then it's no longer safe. So that's just some of the mirrors. And we do want to stress that you want to buy quality products when buying things like mirrors, so that the image is not distorted, because that can make a big difference. So these are just two trusted brands that we know. Ooh. There we go. Okay. Some physical mobility aids. On the left-hand side, we have the handy bar. So this is really just like a little handle that slips into the D-ring on your car door that can give you a little bit more stability when you're getting in and out. In the middle here, we have a seatbelt extender. So that can help if you have limited range of motion or arthritis and pain in your shoulders. And on the right, we have a swivel seat that allows you to sit and then swing your legs in and out of the car when transferring. Some other things you might use are different cushions to raise the height so that you can see over the steering wheel or make yourself closer to the pedals. And then finally, some little tools for if you have arthritis or decreased hand strength that can happen as you get older. So the first one is a key aid, which helps with grip, getting the key into the car, turning it, also can use it for your house, locks and things like that. And then a gas cap turner, which gives you a little bit extra support when trying to unscrew your gas cap. But of course, if something like that is difficult, you could always go to a full service gas station too. All right, so next we have vision. And I want to point out that about 90% of the information used in driving comes through our eyes. So super important. Vision changes affect how we monitor traffic around us. For instance, our eyes determine how close other vehicles or pedestrians may be to our car, as well as how fast they're moving. Types of vision changes people may experience, I have listed on the left-hand side, but it includes how clearly we can see, how wide our field of view is, our sensitivity to glare, and our ability to recognize low contrast drop-offs, and our spatial awareness. So what are some things you can do to adapt to vision changes? First and foremost, keep up with your regular eye exams and wear the prescription that your doctor gave you. That's the easiest one that you can do to set yourself up for success. You can also wear sunglasses, avoid smoking in the car, and keep your windshields and mirrors clean to cut down on the impact of glare and make sure that nothing's interfering with how clearly you can see. You want to make sure that your mirrors are adjusted correctly before driving and checking your rear view mirror frequently to stay aware of your surroundings while driving. You also want to do over-the-shoulder checks when switching lanes or merging, or using one of the adaptive mirrors like we just discussed if that isn't a physical possibility. Finally, you can self-restrict your driving so that you are driving in optimal conditions, like not driving when it's raining or really foggy out. But one of the less intuitive self-restrictions is to drive in familiar areas only. This allows you to not have to rely on reading unfamiliar street signs, but instead use bigger landmarks such as buildings to orient yourself where you are. Okay, cognitive and mental skills for driving. So we know that driving is one of the most complex tasks that we do. It requires quick decision-making, which depends on mental alertness. We're required to be able to switch our attention quickly amongst multiple activities on the road. For example, paying attention to pedestrians entering crosswalks, bicyclists riding on the side of the road, and what the other cars are doing around us. Driving a car also requires us to be able to divide our attention amongst multiple tasks. Things like steering, shifting gears, controlling speed, checking mirrors, and looking ahead to gauge traffic, all essentially at the same time. And finally, driving a car requires us to be able to remember important information, such as where we're going and how we're going to get there, while also being able to deal with any unexpected roadblocks we might hit. No pun intended. So it is important to keep yourself mentally fit, so to speak, which you can do through engaging in regular physical, social, and cognitively stimulating tasks. But there are also some strategies that you can use to maximize your cognitive skills while driving. For example, eliminating distractions. So you want to plan ahead and prepare before you head out on a trip so that you don't have to rummage around the car looking for things or worry about what route you're going to take. You also want to limit the more obvious distractions, such as talking on the phone or engaging in conversations with passengers, but even listening to the radio can be a distraction. So the AAA Safety Foundation actually did research and found that just driving a car in itself, operating it, is a distraction. So there's really no such thing as completely distraction-free driving, but they did rank how distracting certain common activities are. So the order from least distracting to most distracting they found was standard radio music being the least, then talk radio, then talking to a passenger in the car, and then talking on the phone, including hands-free mode. So the distinguisher between talking to a passenger in the car and talking to someone on the phone is that the passenger in the car with you is also aware of their surroundings and what's going on in traffic. But the person on the other line of the phone is not. So it's really not as much the act of holding a phone as it is actually engaging in the conversation. So we really want to avoid the cell phone. If you have a tendency that you need to look at it when it rings, you want to turn it off or put it in the back seat while you're driving. Just because people can try to get to us instantaneously doesn't mean they have to reach us. And of course, if there's an emergency and you need to answer, you can just simply pull over. Other driving habits you may want to adopt include driving only on familiar roads to familiar places so that you don't need to divide your attention as much in regards to navigation, and also limiting unprotected left turns and lane changes. So left turns in general require more cognitive demands since you have to look both ways multiple times and judge the speed of cars coming from both directions. A lot of times we'll hear people say that they got in an accident taking a left turn because the car to the right sped up and hit them, when in fact it's more the decreased processing speed on the part of the driver that leads to this. So you can usually get to the same place that your left turn would take you by taking a series of right turns instead, or perhaps work on finding an alternate route to places you typically go. Another helpful thing can be when you get in one lane, stay in the lane that you're going to be most comfortable driving in, or the one that makes the most sense for where you're going, so that you can avoid switching lanes and merging as possible. All right, sleep. So not really an underlying skill we have, but definitely something that gets impacted by all of the things that we may experience as we age. So I wanted to start talking about sleep by saying that it has been shown that driving drowsy is equivalent to drunk. So when our body hasn't gotten adequate or restful sleep, our skills like attention, judgment, reaction times, and processing speeds all take a hit, just like they do when driving under the influence. So getting restful sleep is super important, but we know that that doesn't always happen. So more importantly, you want to be able to recognize when you're feeling tired or didn't get great sleep and make the decision to avoid driving. So here we've listed a few of what we call sleep hygiene strategies to try to develop a good sleep routine and support restful sleep. But I want to highlight that if you are having trouble sleeping or not feeling rested after sleeping, that's something you want to talk to your doctor about. And finally, medications. So not only does older age often come with having to take an increased amount of prescription medications, which can increase the chances of an interaction, but older adults are also more susceptible to adverse or strong reactions as their body may not use medications as effectively. So it's important to be aware of the medications you're taking and keep your doctor up to date on any supplements or vitamins you may also take, as well as medications that other doctors have prescribed you so they can be aware of any interactions. You want to make sure that you're aware of the possible side effects to look out for, especially if you get prescribed a new medication, and to notify your doctor if you're experiencing any reactions. So just because you have an adverse reaction to a medication that you need to be on doesn't mean you need to stop driving altogether, but rather you want to be strategic in planning either when you'll take the medication if it has flexible timing, or adjusting your driving schedule to accommodate for any side effects. And I'm going to hand it back over to Debbie.
So Amanda did a great job explaining the age-related changes and medical conditions that older drivers face, and she gave us many practical tips and tricks that we can use. Thank you, Amanda. I hope everyone has identified at least one tip or trick that they can start using right away. But for now, the big question is, how do you know when it's time to stop driving? Okay. All right. So I know I've put a little few jokes in there, but I know that this is a serious matter. So seriously, how do you know when you should be concerned about your own or a loved one's driving? And the answer really begins with observations. It's important to observe a person's driving over time to look for patterns and to identify changes. On the next slide, I will share a list of driving behaviors that may signal an issue or raise a concern. But even when older people are not in the car, their actions, statements, or even the way they look may cause you concern or may indicate a problem that could threaten their safety when they're driving. Some of the things you see and hear may be triggered by major events happening in the person's life. These could include the loss of a spouse or a close friend, but an illness or changes in one's medications can also make it hard for the person to drive safely. Amanda already said that driving is the most complex activity that we engage in every day because it requires us to process that large amount of information very quickly and to react quickly. And it is also the most dangerous activity that we engage in because, an accident while driving could lead to death. A person who is experiencing increased difficulty managing less complex tasks of daily living, such as their medications or paying their bills, or if they're experiencing increased forgetfulness or behavioral changes, if they're falling or they have other cognitive issues, they should seek medical attention. They may need to stop driving, at least temporarily, until the cause of these changes is identified and treatment is initiated. So this list of driving behaviors is ranked from minor to more serious, going from left down and then to the right. Many of the less serious issues may be overcome with changes in driving behavior, physical fitness, or using the strategies that Amanda shared with us. The more serious behaviors may require immediate action. Since driving ability seldom changes drastically in a short time, you should be able to track changes over time to get a clear picture of overall driving ability. No single sign can be taken as a warning that the person is at risk or is an unsafe driver. I think there's probably not one of us on this call right now that probably hasn't hit a curb or didn't use proper signaling at some point, or maybe did a poor job of pulling into a parking space. So a single occurrence or, less frequent occurrences of these things are not really a big deal. However, a single occurrence of confusing the brake pedal and the gas pedal, or a single occurrence of stopping for no apparent reason in traffic, is a signal that a person should stop driving immediately and seek medical attention. So now I'm going to turn this back over to Amanda, and she will talk to you about what a comprehensive driving evaluation is and how you might use one to help determine if it is time to retire from driving.
All right, so a formal driving evaluation, before you can decide if it's something that's going to be helpful for you, you need to know what it is. So here at Newton Wellesley, we offer what is known as a comprehensive driving evaluation. It's a two-part process that consists of part one, which is an evaluation in the clinic, and part two, which is an on-road assessment. So in the clinic, you would come in and take about a 2-hour evaluation with either Debbie or myself. It's typically administered by an occupational therapist. And we look at all of the underlying skills required for driving. So your physical skills, how well can you move your arms and legs? How do you have the strength for driving? How quick are your reactions? We do some cognitive testing to get a sense of your attention, your memory, your problem solving. We do a vision screen, just like a regular kind of acuity exam to make sure you meet the requirements for driving. We also look at things like contrast sensitivity and peripheral vision. And if that's all clear, then we look at your visual processing speed to see how quickly your brain can make sense of the information that your eyes are taking in. If all of that looks good enough, then we refer you to part two, which is the on-road assessment. So this is done with a certified driving rehabilitation specialist. We contract with an occupational therapist who does that for us. And you will either go to them and take a standard driving route, or they will come to you and you'll drive in a familiar area. Recommendations for if you have the option to go to them or them come to you will depend on your specific situation. But this is the comprehensive evaluation. So we really get to get a baseline of how your underlying skills are and then see how they manifest in traffic. So are you able to adequately compensate for them? Are there other tips that you could use to compensate for some deficits that we might find? So that leads me to what are the recommendations after you complete the assessment? So once you're done, the clinician who did your in-clinic assessment as well as your on-road assessment will collaborate and compare notes and come up with a recommendation for you. So if you did perfectly fine, everything looks great, we might say go ahead and continue to drive as you usually would, no restrictions. If there were some things that were iffy or you had some deficits that we think you should compensate for, we might say continue driving with recommended restrictions or strategies, such as the ones we talked about earlier. So driving in only familiar places or driving only short distances, using different tools, things like that. And in some instances, we do recommend driver retirement. So that's when we would want you to voluntarily surrender your license and report to the RMV. I think it's important to know that when we recommend driver retirement, we're not always saying that someone doesn't have the skills to just operate a vehicle, like to actually just drive a car. But what we're really saying is that the skills aren't adequate to be able to process, react, and make safe decisions quickly enough for anything unexpected that pops up. If you've had a neurological or medical event, say you were in the hospital, you got very deconditioned, or you had something like a stroke, we may evaluate your rehab potential and see if you might benefit from either some physical therapy, some occupational therapy, or even some speech therapy. And then once you're done with that, have you reevaluated to see if you've got the skills enough to be able to return to driving. And finally, depending on the situation, we may recommend a reassessment with your doctor or pharmacist, because if sometimes, as we talked about, medications can really have an impact on your underlying skills, like your attention, your arousal. So if we think that there's something going on with medications, then we might send you back to them to be reevaluated and see if there's any adjustments that can be made to make it safe for you to drive again. I think that's it. Okay, so how do you get to one of those? So we do work under doctor's orders. You can get a referral essentially from any doctor that knows you. A lot of times it's people's primary care doctors. Sometimes it's the neurologist if it's at an event. But the reason why you come, your doctor might recommend it themselves because of having medical concerns. A family member may recommend it as a good way to get an objective stance on how you're doing. Or you might want to come at your own volition, right? And just get a check-in, and maybe you have some concerns or you've gotten in an accident or had some of those little warning signs and you want to come in for a formal evaluation. So obviously we do it here at Newton Wellesley. We do know that Spalding Rehab in Boston does also offer the 2-part comprehensive evaluation. But there's other programs that do too. So typically your doctor will know the most local program for you to go. And finally, these are some other resources that maybe before you're ready to jump into a formal driving evaluation, or you just want to learn more about this stuff, that you can access. So just a good little tip to know is that the RMV does have a 65+ scheduling line. As we know, they moved pretty much everything online and you have to make an appointment for everything, which can be kind of a nightmare. So having this line dedicated just for seniors can be really helpful if you need to make an appointment, or if you have just any questions about things that you have to get done. You can also visit the RMV Older Drivers website. So I'm going to see if I can go on to these really quick. Yep. So here you'll have kind of similar information like we gave you today. So some warning signs. There are some workshops, more specific information for seniors for the RMV, resources for caregivers. So this is one resource you can use. AAA also has their senior driver safety website. So this again has ways for you to kind of self-assess your driving and also some programs that may help you work on the underlying skills for driving. And then the Hartford, this is an insurance company, right? The Hartford Insurance website is really great in terms of articles for how to discuss driving concerns with a loved one. Also information on driving technologies, and resources for specifically addressing driving with dementia. So that can be really helpful for wanting to talk to family members or anything like that. We also encourage you to reach out to your local library or senior center. It's probably how you found out about us today. Or your local AAA for any older adult driving courses or information sessions. I know the Needham Senior Center just recently had the RMV come and talk just about easier ways for seniors to access the RMV and also programs that they were aware of. But I know that people have talked about being able to get discounts on their insurance premiums if they participate in a senior driver program. We don't know of any specific ones, but I think the quickest way to find out would be to check with your insurance to find out which programs they accept, because you might be able to get it. So that's all she wrote, right? That's about it. So I think what we'll do is stop sharing our screen and turn our cameras back on. If anyone has any questions, comments, concerns. It's nice to see everyone.
So thank you. I'm going to stop the recording because people will have personal questions. So I just wanted to thank you for that wonderful presentation. And now we'll go to the questions. So let me stop recording right now.